Thank you so very much, Mr. Chairman. Georgians are hurting and are dealing with the rising costs of basic things like clothing and medicine and groceries. And as someone who's home every week dealing with families, as their senator and families in my church, I see this up close. Families need immediate support as we're dealing with the rising costs that are a consequence of a pandemic where the economy was slowed down significantly, supply chain issues, and corporations artificially raising prices. And that's why I introduced the Relief for Families Act. This legislation would cut costs of essential goods for hardworking families by allowing states to use their American Rescue Plan dollars to offset sales tax holidays on essential items like groceries, school supplies, diapers, and other household goods. This is a win-win because it's covered by revenue or resources we made available through the American Rescue Plan. States don't have to take it onto their budget. It won't cost the states or the federal government any additional money. It's a no-brainer investment in working families. Dr. Stevenson, um, my bill would cut taxes on essential goods like food, diapers, and clothing. Can you tell us who is likely to benefit most from a policy like this?
Yes, thank you for asking. I think that's an extremely well targeted policy because who's going to benefit most are going to be the families that spend a high share of their budget on essential items like food, diapers, and other necessities. It's also the case, so is how economists talk about it. We think of that as having very inelastic demand. You pretty much have to buy those things, even if it means really sacrificing spending elsewhere. Well, that also means that when it comes to tax incidents, like who sort of benefits when you cut the tax, it's going to be those families that benefit rather than the stores. So I think it's a really good way of getting money back into families, and it is specifically targeting those families that spend a high share of their budget on essential items, and those are, by definition, lower income families.
Right. So these are ordinary folks, folks who don't have a wide margin, and they will, as you point out, these are essential items. And so, as the economy opens back up, how important are policies that keep costs down for working class and middle class families? How important is that for them and for the larger economy?
Keeping costs down for for low income families is critical because they spend all of their money now. They don't have a way to hedge against inflation by putting it into some inflation protected asset because they're using their money to live right now. They're the ones who are dealing with higher prices at the pump, higher food prices, um, higher energy prices because these are a really big share of their budget. So anything you can do to offer relief to families, I think, is really critical. And one of the things we saw disappear this year that's been so hard on families is the end of the expanded child tax credit.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree with that, and I would hope that we could extend the expanded child tax credit, the largest tax cut for working and middle class families in American history. Tax cut for ordinary folks. This federal tax holiday, another tax cut for ordinary folks, which is why I'm glad we were able to pass the American Rescue Plan. And just the other week, claw back 400, well, prevent $400 million from being clawed back from people of Georgia so we could fund this kind of thing. Gas prices, of course, is another issue that folks are struggling with. And during the past year of supply chain disruptions, we saw ocean carriers use market volatility to increase their profits by 2,000% in the middle of a pandemic. This is why I called for a federal investigation into shipping carriers' corporate greed. And I'm happy to see that the Department of Justice answered my call and has subpoenaed Maersk as part of a probe into supply chain disruptions. These types of corporate greed have significantly affected our supply chains for years. Dr. Spriggs, what effect has corporate greed and market consolidation had on our supply chains and manufacturing? Has it, in fact, raised costs for families, pushed down wages, made the economy less resilient in your opinion?
Yes, we need to do more to police market concentration. We know specifically, you had mentioned food, that this has been critical. Cattle ranchers aren't any happier than those of us buying beef.
Mm.
Neither one of us are smiling at this price. And the risk that the workers were put through in producing this meat, um, the reckoning hasn't come for that. We have characterized this disease so much as the loss of those who were elderly, but we forget how many workers died among the million Americans who have died from this disease. In Georgia, your state in particular, the disproportionate loss of Black life was Black workers in food processing. And so that market power seems to also protect them from the kind of steps that we needed to take to protect workers. So, yes, we need to do a lot more about the market concentration of power.
Well, thank you so much. I think it's past time for us to hold corporations accountable for price gouging in the middle of a pandemic of all times. And I'm glad that we're thinking about ways to invest in an economy from the bottom up rather than waiting on resources to trickle down. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Senator Warnock.